Yes,
Can I stop you?
Yes, sir.
You made us adjourn for 30 minutes, and Chair made it clear to you when we adjourned that the purpose of you looking at this document was to show us where it says what you say. I mean, the sum total of this document is that the MOU was never finalized. That's what he says in para 12. And then that MOU is attached as one of the documents, and it's unsigned. That's all this says.
Chair, when we started dealing with the matter and we came to this part here, I was referred to page 88, which was a letter in another matter, or in the other issue, concerning the working relations with CAT VIP. So, we're coming to now the IPOD report and the letter that was drafted with regard to looking at the so-called concern areas in the IPOD report. Hence, I'm saying I wanted to see this to say what it says. And why was our thinking behind the fact that we say that you attach little or no value to Director Makunazi's report or response. And that is why we looked at it, Chair. And I know, my apologies if it's deemed to be wasted, but for me, I needed to see it. It's clearly a document which the Commission had not looked at or possibly had, maybe looked at but not had, which has resulted in me looking at this document. I think it's important for that respect. With this document linked to the IPOD report gives us then what the thought process was in completing the rest of the documents.
You see, the point of substance is at page 345, your letter, and I say your because you basically approved the content.
Yes.
First line, you make the point, and Ms. Sigal referred to this, you make the point that it will be difficult to prove fraud and corruption. Your report attaches little or no value to the statement of Director Makunazi, the suspect. How does what you have just read now, how does it show us that it will be difficult to prove fraud or corruption?
Chair,
if at all?
Okay. In terms of fraud, we dealt with the elements of fraud in this document.
No, what you have read, how does it...
From what I've read is that the Makunazi, he was saying that he was responding to or furthering the functions or the duties given to him by the Deputy Chief of Police Mzolo. In doing that, he proceeded in this regard to say, when I assumed my acting responsibilities, he had to finalize, one of the issues he had to finalize at 5.10 was finalize the standing operating procedure on security division by the 28th of October. He then says that in line with the administrative tasks, executed my duties and designed a SOP and wrote memorandums connected to security division documents, which were all escalated to the office.
We saw you and we saw that and we heard you read it. I'm asking you a simple question. How does it make it difficult to prove fraud or corruption?
Chair, holistically, from the IPOD report read together with this document, and where we say you haven't considered what he's saying here in terms of the fraud and corruption, where was the elements are crafted here. So the document is essential to say that when we say you haven't considered it, in here, Makunazi sets out the position. Which we looked at to say, but if you're not looked at here without verifying what his position is, and what he says that he was acting on instructions or acting in furtherance of another matter, then that should have been also investigated further to complete your full report. So that is part of the issue. We looked at the evidence, hence the definitions to the extent of fraud and corruption, linked to fraud and then in terms of precca.
I will suggest to you that that document has nothing that shows that it will be difficult to prove fraud or corruption. There's nothing in that document that shows that. And that is why it's difficult for you to pinpoint for us where the difficulty appears or manifests.
So, on page 87, the difficulty to prove fraud and corruption I've consulted with internal staff and I'm advised on the current evidence it will be difficult. And holistically, one of the first aspects is your report attaches no value to the statement of. So that report the statement was never discussed. Holistically, it has been difficult to prove fraud and corruption given all the other factors that we've listed here. And it goes specifically to, if you look at in respect of fraud, what are the issues we raised? On page 3, in respect of corruption, what are the issues we raised? So this is why in total, given the full factors we've raised there, and also including the fact of non-consideration of this or not dealing with this, we raised that it could be difficult to prove fraud and corruption, and hence that is at the time, the undertaking considered was what we came to say.
Ms. Seegers, you are still dealing with the letter. Let me come
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Behari, the next aspect on the letter relates to the issue about the benefit. I think it's on paragraph 5 of page 345, where you deal with the registration of the vehicles was not done by the suspect but by the authorized personnel from Fleet. You see that? I think you've dealt with that aspect with Chair. But later on you deal with the fact that at paragraph 8 you say on page 346 that the fraudulently registered vehicles using the city's funds amounted to corruption because CAT benefited unduly. This is not true. The vehicles were not registered fraudulently, as you've said. It is difficult to see how CAT benefited from the registration of the vehicles as they transferred ownership of their vehicles to the city. On the contrary, CAT sustained a loss of the asset while the vehicles were registered in the name of the city. Now, when you take that compared to what Brigadier Mkwanazi says in his statement, which you were referred to by Commissioner Kumalo in paragraph 12 of his warning statement, where he says the donation of cars, memorandum of understanding and delivery of vehicles was not finalized as a result of the dissatisfaction by the department, EMPD. If it says that the delivery of the vehicles and the donation of the cars were not yet finalized, it means that CAT was in possession of vehicles registered in the name of EMPD.
Chair, the flow in terms of that part was that the vehicles were registered. They went to Christine had given, when the details of the vehicles were brought through, they were registered by Christine and his delegate or other officials involved in that. And thereafter, Rivers Peace, Deputy Commissioner Rivers Peace raised and said, no, these are not proper in terms of the donations. They went back, and that is when, I think within a day or two, they registered back to CAT VIP. So in terms of delivery, all the intention was, in terms of the donation that was effected, was put in place for receiving those the four vehicles. The only issue then was, of course, the important issue was that Rivers Peace raised us and said, no, the donations are not following the process, hence they were returned. And that is our understanding from what's contained in the document.
Sorry, why do you say they were returned? What was returned?
The vehicles, when I say returned in terms of ownership vehicles, so...
No, Mr. Behari, you are a lawyer. You know how movable property is transferred in law. If Mkwanazi has never seen the vehicles, and EMPD or Ekurhuleni was never in physical possession of the vehicles, why do you say they were given to Ekurhuleni and then they were returned? They were never given to Ekurhuleni. What happened was that registration documents were completed and the cars were registered in the name of Ekurhuleni.
Yes.
But there was never delivery of any vehicles. And those vehicles remained in possession of CAT VIP. That's the factual position.
Chair, I never said that there was physical delivery of those vehicles. I said that changes were given because Mkwanazi gave the details to Stein. He registered the vehicles. When I talk about return, I mean return of ownership, not the physical vehicles. That means they went back and they re-registered the vehicles again out of the names of such Ekurhuleni back to the donor. At that stage. So there was never any time where I suggested that the vehicles were physically came to
What
Ekurhuleni.
was the benefit for Ekurhuleni during that time? Between the date when they were registered in the name of Ekurhuleni and when they were registered back to CAT? What was the benefit
There was-
of Ekurhuleni?
There was no exact benefit at that time, but if you look at the entire intention of the process was for the vehicles, Ekurhuleni to receive 4 vehicles. It was just a donation. Once the issues were raised and said this is not an acceptable process, had that not been finalized, it would have been a benefit to the city.
So the benefit is the intention.
The benefit in terms of what was going to happen, had that finalized, the process finalized and there were deliveries, there would have been the benefit to the city of
But
Ekurhuleni.
when you prepare this memorandum, you know that the process was never finalized. So you can't look forward and say, had it been finalized. You know that it was not finalized when you are doing this response to IPT.
But Chair, it goes to the intention of donating the vehicle. That's covered everywhere else.
No, the intention does not matter, Mr. Bahari. When you prepare this report, you know that that never happened. Whatever the intention was, it never materialized. You know that.
Chair, the vehicles were transferred in the document, transferred. So transfer of ownership happened. And then transfer out of ownership happened. The delivery itself would have been perfecting and finalizing the process. That never happened.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I have no further questions on this document.
Can I just ask, this sworn statement, at paragraph 5, it lists the functions that Mr. Mkhwanazi, Brigadier Mkhwanazi, says where he was tasked, administrative tasks. That's what he calls it. Which of these do you, and they range from 5.1 to 5.12, which of these did you consider to authorize him to do this transaction of accepting donations, of entering into MOUs with Medicare and CAT VIP?
Chair, there is no one instance to say to him, giving you any authority to authorize. That in fact, if there was such an authority, there would
Sorry,
have
I
been.
can't hear you properly. Maybe just move forward a bit.
Yeah, so I'm saying that in terms of the provisions there was nothing authorizing him in terms of the functions given to him.
Yes.
But overall, the functions were to him to finalize standard operating procedure on the security division by 20 October 2021. Now, in that standard operating procedures, finalized standard operating, consolidation of comments. So all of these functions here was what he used to continue to say, I'm finishing the orders. So hence I'm saying it should have been explored by IPID to say what exactly were your functions?
No,
what exactly
you
did you do?
explored it. That's why you're commenting that he's not guilty. It will be difficult to prove fraud and corruption. It's because you have looked at this. You actually tell IPID that he was authorized. He had certain authority from his superior who was on leave, and he acted in accordance with that. So this is what you say at 3. You say there is unchallenged evidence that the suspect, while acting as Deputy Chief of Police, was given powers by Deputy Chief Mzolo to finalize matters relating to the security division. And then in the last sentence, you say the suspect was duly appointed to the acting position and was empowered to attend to matters relating to the security division. Your report does not elaborate on this. And then you say, so before I get to the Christine matter, now I look at this list of tasks which Brigadier Mkhwanazi describes as administrative tasks, and I think he's right. When you look at that list, all of it looks administrative. Which do you say authorized him to do the things that are the subject of the complaint and the investigation by IPID? And it's not, let me offer, it's not standard operating procedures to accept donations, to instruct Christine to register those vehicles, to send MOUs, to consider an MOU and send it to the Chief of Police for his signature. That's not standard operating procedures. It doesn't fall under 5.10. And what else in that long list of tasks authorized him to do? Did you consider, when you did this letter and challenged IPID, what did you consider to fall within the mandate that he did?
We asked IPID, did you consider what he said in total? If you look at paragraph 6, in line with Administrative Task 4.0, I executed my administrative duties and designed the SOP and wrote memorandums connected to the security division.
So when you say paragraph 6, you mean of the...
Of that annexure that we just attached now, we received now. On paragraph 6 of that, after the administrative functions are listed.
Okay.
And wrote memorandums connected to the security division, documents which were all escalated to the Office of the Chief of Police and relevant external stakeholders.
Yes.
So if you look at that, and you look at the other evidence there, if it involves a memorandum that we've been dealing with all of this, which you say was not legally compliant, not approved by the chief, but it was sent to the Office of the Chief of Police, and hence I'm saying he should have investigated based on what Legal Tires mentions. That.
But investigate what? Because the memorandum that he relied on, is unsigned, and he says so. So what did you want IPID? What are you criticizing IPID for?
He says here that he was entitled to by way of his acting appointment.
And you accepted that,
right.
that this list from 5.1 to 5.12 authorized him to accept donations.
But to do all in terms of, then he qualifies it.
No, Mr. Behari, please try and answer my question. I'm asking a direct question, so I want to know, do you say, and please point me to what it is. I'm saying look at 5.1 to 5.12. Do you say anything in that list of 12 tasks empowered him or authorized him to accept a donation of motor vehicles and to get it registered in the name of the EMPD while those motor vehicles remained with CAT VIP, because that's what happened. We know that's what happened.
Sure.
Are you saying 5.1 to 5.12 authorized him to do that, and which of these tasks do you say authorized that?
Chair, 5.1, if you look at paragraph 6, which talks holistically in his affidavit, in line with the Administrative Task 4.10, which is Annexure 2, I executed my, now the Annexure 2 talks about doing, well, here it's listed as from 5.1 to 5.12. It refers to 4.10. I executed my administrative duties and designed the SOP and wrote memorandums. So I would expect that they didn't deal with that in that report.
No. Forget IPID did not deal with it. You are looking at IPID's report. You write this response to IPID. So you're engaging IPID. You've looked at Brigadier Mkwana's warning statement. You satisfied yourself that what he did falls within the tasks that are listed in there. Otherwise, you wouldn't say what you're saying in the statement. You wouldn't say to them fraud would be difficult to prove, right? You wouldn't be saying that. You wouldn't be saying corruption would be difficult to prove unless you have engaged with it and formed a view. And that's the discussion I'm having with you. I'm testing you because remember, as the chair told you yesterday, the background to this engagement with you is you colluded with the CEOs, with the city managers' protection of Brigadier Mkwana's, who evidence before us is he was involved in a relationship, an inappropriate relationship with Mr. Madlanga and Mr. Madlanga's company. That's the context in which we are having this discussion with you. So you have to be able before us to explain your own positions where things don't make sense. It doesn't make sense, to me at least, that you would look at IPID's letter to the city, which directs you to take disciplinary action, and then you would respond in this long letter, engaging them about proving fraud, the difficulty of proving fraud and corruption, and setting out what the difficulties are with it. It doesn't make sense that you responded that way. So I would like to know from you, the head of legal, when you wrote this response to IPID, what did you see as exculpating Brigadier Mkhwanazi in his warning statement, not what he says? You see the list of tasks, you see paragraph 6, where he says, in line with administrative task item 4.10, which is to finalize standard operating procedures. I executed my administrative duties and designed the SOP and wrote MOUs connected to the security division, full stop. Rather, documents which were all escalated to the Office of the Chief of Police and relevant external stakeholders. That paragraph, when you read it in this warning statement and when you looked at the tasks, what did you consider to be exculpatory of Brigadier Mkhwanazi that would make the corruption claim and fraud claim difficult to prove?
The exculpatory part, Chair, would have been then where in paragraph 6, where he says that the functions allocated to him in terms of 4.10 Annexure 2, he executed his admin functions and designed an SOP and wrote memorandums connected to the security division. Documents which were all escalated to the Office of the Chief of Police.
Okay,
and
so you're saying he's writing the memorandum and escalating it to the Chief of Police was an answer, according to you, to a charge of fraud and corruption.
It's part of the process where he says that I was authorized to do this. I was authorized to do this by my Deputy Chief of Police, and I was following up on those instructions.
Okay, and you accepted that he was authorized to receive a donation, because you say, that's what he says, right? So I'm not debating with you what he says. I'm saying he says this in the statement. You accept that he was authorized to accept a donation because that's what the complaint is.
The authorization, which I spoke to, was about him drafting this MOUs and sending them to the Chief of Police. Yeah, I want to complete the train of thought. Sending to the Office of the Chief of Police, who ought to have commented to say, but this is not what it's on and this is what it, not what it said. So him, when he states here, it should have been further delved by IPA to say, but what do you mean you have this authority to do that and you send it to the Chief of Police? Did the Chief of Police be approached with that? Other external stakeholders we know would have been Medicare 24 in terms of the trail of emails we've looked at. But I'm saying that in terms of that, did you look at the affidavit of Mkhwanazi? Did you consider that? Because he's creating the impression here that he was authorized to fulfill and complete investigations and also informed the Chief of Police to that extent.
Thank you, Commissioners. Chair, I indicated that I had no further questions on that letter. May I proceed to the next issue? Mr. Bihari, I want to deal with the issue about the change in the delegation matrix.